afternoon. The date is June 17th, 2025, and the time is 4:33. I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Uplift Education Board of Trustees. To ensure we have quorum present, I'm going to read out the names of the members of the Executive Committee, and if you are here, please say present. We have Dr. Will Melville, Rusty, great, Cameron,
Present.
Harold,
Present.
Tracy, Christine. Great. And of course, for those who I know weren't able to be with us, I'm not going to call out their names. So I'd also like to welcome our new prospective board members who are here with us today. And I'm just going to ask when I say your name, if you'll please wave, so that way we can associate a name and a face. And we're so excited to be welcoming our new class of trustees. So Dawn Moore, welcome. Thank you so much. Kristen Perkins, awesome. Jeremy Scruggs, who is our parent trustee from Uplift Ascend, awesome. And Latasha Archie, who is our parent representative from Uplift Infinity. Wonderful. We have a few other new trustees who, of course, you all will hear more about later on in our governance update, but wanted to welcome our new trustees who were able to join us today for the meeting. Alex, as I hand it over for the community forum for you to share if we have any community guests, would you also like to give an update to the board on some paperwork you have for them?
Yes, we'll do. So what everyone has in front of them is annual required information we have to get from our board members. This year, we're going to ask that every one of our board members just fill out all three forms. I'm happy to answer any questions on them. I will be staying afterwards if you do have any questions, say if you like. The information is ideally pretty straightforward. Information like work information, whether you would like to keep that information confidential if you like. I'm also going to be sending out an email with the information as well, to read it home that way. My ask is that you please return these by next Wednesday, so we can meet them and go on to the state to get that information from you. Number one. Number two, for our executive committee members who are present, just a reminder, July 31st, July 31st, July 31st, July 31st is the deadline to have your annual board training completed by. If you have any questions on that, please let me know. That's for executive committee members only. And then, with respect to community forum, we have no speakers signed up, so we're going to move on to our meeting.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alex. Okay, so I'll continue on with our mission moment. So we had 13 graduations across the network. It was really joyful and wonderful to celebrate our over 1,000 seniors in the class of 2025. We've continued our 20-plus year tradition of having 100% college acceptance rate. You can see they were awarded over $85 million in scholarships. We continue to see 75 to 78% of our class being first in their family to attend college. We've shared this number multiple times with you. We're so proud that they achieved 68% college readiness rate, which is 2x what the state's average is, and that's really special. Amongst the class of seniors, we had our largest class of Dell Scholars. That scholarship is a really prestigious scholarship. It's $20,000 scholarship along with the Dell Computer and what I'm going to call kind of executive coaching and mentoring support to really help scholars persist. And we have one big scholar, which is basically a full ride through your entire educational higher ed journey. So if you want a master's degree, if you want a PhD, it's a really very special thing. And so we're thrilled to have a big scholar this year as well. So there's some pictures of our graduations. Of course, we had our founding graduating classes at Uplift Ascend and then Uplift Elevate in Full Work, which is really special to celebrate this year. Yeah, I'm going to keep on going and give you a little bit of some context setting for today's meeting before handing it over to Remy. So what are we going to cover today? We are going to go deep into STAR data. That's what we do in our June board meeting. In today's meeting, we're going to look internally at our STAR data. How did we do versus last year. And how did we do over the past several years? If we like to show you how we did in the past few years since the pandemic. We will, in the August board meeting, show you comparison data, which just was publicly released today, about how we did relative to our partner peers, other ISDs, traditional public school districts around the DFW area of the state, etc. Then we are going to have a finance and enrollment update from Leslie and Amanda. In June, we do two things at every June board meeting when it comes to finance. We have to vote on an amended current year budget because the state requires the final budget passed by law to be in a very narrow gap to what our actual budget was. So we'll do that here. We'll do it again one final time after our audit has started when we see you all at the August or September board meeting. And then we have to vote on the budget for next school year. So we'll do both of those things. We also in June talk about governance. And so Wesley's going to go over our board self-evaluation survey results. We get to welcome new trustees and we get to say thank you and show our gratitude to our current board members. And then we'll approve minutes at the meeting. This is just a reminder to guide us of what our network strategic priorities are at a board level this year. And so we're going to dive deep into that first one, which is making sure we're driving strong overall academic performance, and then we're also going to lean in on staying financially strong during the rest of our mission. So we'll focus on those two in particular today. On the next slide, we covered this in our last meeting together. The only thing that's added is we now have STAR scores back. So we were shooting to hit a 45% overall meets master's level across all of our 3rd through 8th grade tests. We ended up hitting 44% in reading, so almost there, but 35% in math, which Remy will share more about. It's continued to be our challenge and the challenge of others across the country recovering from the pandemic and getting those math achievement numbers back up. So overall, we were at 40%, and that's up 2% from our 38% that we were at last year. But otherwise, all the other metrics in green we hit, and we covered those at our last meeting. So what you have printed in front of you are the dates for the board meetings for next school year. On the first page is for the full board, and then on the second page is your executive committee meeting dates for members of our executive committee. Your calendar invites will go out tomorrow to everyone. So look for a set of calendar invites to be coming from me, so that way you have all of these dates on your calendar. Great. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Washington.
Thanks, Jessamine. So I'm going to start where we're actually going to end our academic update today. And I'm talking about driving for overall achievement. We will have time to go through some highlights from our STAR data. But let's just talk about our approach to accelerating outcomes at Uplift. And it's what we were able to do with our ACT, TSA, college readiness, as well as what we've been able to do with our primary learning acceleration program. And so these are the key takeaways that we're using to now define what it means to accelerate outcomes at Uplift. And one, we know going into next year, we have to have really targeted and data-driven instruction. So what that means is we're going to require some smaller assessments. Teachers would look at the data, respond, and shape their instruction to best support students' needs, either in the moment or the next day. The second is just structured and consistent interventions. What we've allowed in the past was just leaders to determine what type of intervention students need. What we learned from our work with ACT, college readiness, and with the primary learning acceleration that Priscilla and Jonathan will talk about is that it actually needs to be very thoughtful and needs to be connected to the learning that kids are having in the classroom or upcoming instruction. And so now we know that has to be part of what we do to define our interventions here at our Uplift, and they have to be consistent. They have to be each day or a certain dosage per week and some sort of tutorial support. And the last thing is just frequent and timely and targeted professional development. Before and prior iterations pre-COVID, we had professional development as a network every quarter, at the end of the quarter, is something traditional. But we now know our teachers need a lot more have to offer those either monthly or some other time period, just depending on the classroom area. So those are the three things that like we have now been able to define as a network of things like based on our learning that will become part of our core practice and simulate practice as a network team. To go to the next slide, I'll talk about expanding options for economic mobility. Gavin shared, the highlight of us hitting the 68% college readiness being twice the state average. But we actually got recognized recently by Dallas County Promise for the Economic Mobility Award. So all of our Dallas County campuses received an award. They got a $13,000, $500 total in discretionary spending that principals or school leaders or school directors will get a chance to use to support their campuses. So it's pretty neat to be honored for so many of our schools to be honored in that way based off of the work that they've done on ACT College Readiness. So just wanted to give a shout out that we're getting some notice for like the work that we've done, and that was based off of the prior year's results and not even the results from this particular school year. So that's pretty awesome for our high schools. And my last thing here that I'll talk about is just the work that we're doing on like ensuring enrollment for the upcoming year, enrollment and attendance priorities. So on attendance, we've had an opportunity to look at where we were strong and what efforts yielded the most results after this past year. So we're stepping back and looking at what are the things we're going to change in our attendance guidance to our campuses and how we're going to train on that. At Leadership Academy, each one of our campus K-12 teams actually took a step back and looked at their data from last year and then looked at what did they need to do to change their processes on campus to ensure they were all on the same page. I think we got some really good positive feedback that was really, really useful time. We're going to keep the ball rolling and making sure that we're making the right changes for every school and having a closer eye on monitoring attendance and responding to the things and involving our parents in the process to get them more involved in how we ensure kids are coming to school every day. The second part of the work that we're doing this summer, working with Amanda and Angela and our Family Scholar Engagement team and our schools, there's a complete cross-functional collaboration is making sure that we're doing everything we can to hit our first day of school target. Making sure we're staying strategic on our communication campaigns, who we're reaching out to right now, who we think may not show up on the first day of school, who we need to continue to engage with throughout the summer to make sure that kids, know the expectations coming into the school year. And so we've been working over the last week or so to make sure all of our efforts are working in local specifically, but also over the next several weeks, how do we all stay connected to make sure we have an eye where our grade levels of schools will need more support in terms of making sure that they meet their first day of school target. So I'm super excited about where the collaboration will go. Yesterday we had an event, I think, for our first year scholars, those that are skating in Arlington, where we had over 600 babies show up. And so we want to know, like, it's great that we have them showing up. I also want to know if those families actually show up on the first day of school. So I think we are walking into this season much more data focused to see what efforts are yielding the most impact. We'll have to continue to replicate in the future, and what things do we have to go back to the drawing board in terms of where we need to put our energy and efforts around either communication or support that we need to show up on the first day of school. So those are like the three things I wanted to highlight before jumping into the academic, the actual start data. Does anyone have any questions about those? I'll take a little bit of a break, and I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan Dan, who's going to walk through our executive summary and the soul of arms on our primary data. Then I'll pick it back up and see that second.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just going to do some highlights of our data before I turn it over to Priscilla and Matt to go on that a little bit deeper. But some of our bright spots from this year, just a reminder, our primary learning accelerations that are the 10 schools that were the lowest performing last year, we put a lot of effort and energy into. We actually saw tremendous growth in third grade with students getting into masters, increased by 12%, which is pretty tremendous for us, and we're very excited. It also moved third grade reading by 3 percentage points across all of those 10 campuses, which was very meaningful for us. Middle school, in every subject area, we saw increases in all subject areas across all grade levels, which is really exciting. So we're making some steady increment growth there as well. Also want to point out that our biggest areas of opportunity, primary reading and math progress. So while there was a little bit of growth, the gains were more modest than they were in math. And fourth grade had minimal growth in both reading and math. And then fifth grade is an area that saw a sharp decline, especially in math, and so we really need to dig into there. In middle and high school math, we want, and Dr. Washington will talk about this, but revisit strengthening our approach to accelerating math performance and preparing our kids to master Algebra 1. And in high school, STAR EOC retesters, especially in 11th and 12th grade on our English exams, we just saw that less than 1% passed those tests. So once they leave 10th grade, which is where they traditionally take the test, if they don't pass it that year, we're just noticing a struggle of getting those kids to pass later on, and that significantly affects the rest of our performance. And so what do we need to do in order to address those needs? So our next steps to ensure that we are meeting our goals for next year, strengthening and expanding our primary acceleration work. We saw some wins from this year, and so how do we take the learnings and apply those to next year while expanding to fourth grade? Enhancing intervention systems in middle and high school, becoming more structured and making sure that there's far more cohesion throughout the day. And finally, working with our high school leaders to really target retester support and create some structures so that we're really meeting the needs of those kids once they're not in those core classes. Over to Priscilla.
Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the new board members. Those of you I haven't met, I'm Priscilla Harms. And I want to talk a little bit about our accelerated learning. If you remember, those of you who were here at the beginning, I showed you like the stairs of how we were doing it. This is just another version of what the stairs were like. So we really focused on third grade this year in the 10 lowest performing academic schools from the previous year. And we restructured how we work with our primary network leadership. So Jonathan, as you remember, was the deputy chief of secondary, and I was the deputy chief of primary. And then through the Charter School Growth Fund grant funding, we were able to do some shifts in how we work. So yeah, it's not normal to have two deputy chiefs in primary. I just want to throw that out there. So Jonathan came down and became the primary deputy chief of primary, and then I became the primary deputy chief of accelerated learning. And that's how we were able to do this. So that's part of the restructuring. And then we restructured some of how our teams work, talking about our curriculum instruction specialists. So all of that went into that. So then we included monthly training for teachers and leaders, and we were really excited to be able to pull teachers off campus once a month and really give them in-depth training in reading and math for third grade teachers. And then for those school leaders, they came off campus once a month, and then I pulled them for online training once a month. So I actually had 2 touch points with them each month, not counting all the times that we were on the campus. So we really restructured how I did my work, and I spent a lot of time on campuses this year. And then Jonathan and Marie would join me on many of those visits so that we could talk about what we were seeing in school and make changes as we went. And then we had the tutors. I think this was probably one of the most exciting things, that we had dedicated tutors for intervention. And they met with kids 3 times a week for 30 minutes. And so that they were doing tutoring on campus during the school day. So we weren't trying to drag the kids in early in the morning or after school. We were really able to touch them during that school day when we already had them. And then we created leader and scholar incentives. We have pictures of sometimes when the kids were getting their incentives for reaching their goals, and it's just really exciting and enlightening to see their faces light up when they reach a goal. And it doesn't matter if it was a pencil or an eraser, like the prize didn't matter to them. The fact that they were reaching goals and they could tell us what their goals were the exciting part. And you know, some of them knew my name, some of them didn't, but they'd be like, hey, I got a pencil, I reached my goal. I'm like, great, what's your next goal? So, you know, it was nice to have them being excited about the work that they were doing in third grade. So, this is how our data looks. So what you see is the grade level, the subject, and then the non-PLA growth. And this is growth on STAR, from the previous year to this year, and then the PLA growth. And as, you know, Jonathan already stated, in third grade, we saw tremendous growth in math in the PLA schools. And we also saw some growth in reading. And of course, I always want double digits, and Ruby and Yasmin are constantly copying me off the ledge that be grateful for the growth and keep building. And so one of the things we were looking at is, okay, we saw growth across third grade all the way through. What can we do to make sure that this is sustainable for one, and two, that we can keep it going in the other grade levels? So we really know that when we target scholars, teachers, leaders, and we really stay on point of what our message is and what we want to happen, that the growth happens. And so when we're looking at this, we looked also at the fourth and fifth grade in the PLA schools around their growth, and also the non-PLA schools. And while in fourth grade we saw modest growth in fourth grade, and fifth grade is where we really had to take a hard look at what happened. Why didn't some of the strategies, especially in the PLA schools for math, why didn't they translate over to fourth and fifth grade, since we spent so much time training leaders? And that's something that my team and I are looking at very closely, and not making any assumptions going into the next school year about what happens. We're adding fourth grade, but we also know that we're gonna have to touch on some of these fifth grade classes. And then we've already talked to our peers about sixth grade, because some of the kids that we're sending up to sixth grade from our PLA school, they're gonna need that extra support starting on day one, so that everybody's ready to make sure that we're pushing towards the goals that we need.
Before I switch to middle school, I should say thank you for the 12%, you just got 12% gains now at a quick glance at everyone else's. It's really hard to do in 1 year, and I think that's really strong growth. We had a new reading curriculum this past year, so we knew to be like temper our expectations with like what to do, and to put up some growth in reading as well. It's like really strong compliment to the work that you're doing, and collaboration with John, and that I think that's kudos to you, and like thank you for your hard work. It's a
Now I'm gonna jump to that here. I had two questions as you went through this. Isn't it true that coming out of COVID, the literacy recovered quicker than math? Yes. So you've already caught up better there, so you're not going to see as much growth by definition, right? You had improved a lot more. Thank you. Is that a wrong assumption?
I mean, I think that's true. I think that I would say, like, we've got to stay competitive and figure out how we accelerate more in reading. And I think that this has probably given us an impetus to figure out how to do that now with our new curriculum. So, like, that's true. We caught up way faster. So, like, the growth that the team has made is definitely probably close before it is close before it's gap to pre-COVID.
My other one has to do with algebra. Are we going to talk about that?
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
I was looking at science for fifth grade. I know like third and fourth, they really don't touch base on science real hard. Is that maybe the reason that it is so low in fifth grade and makes sense for fifth grade, because we're not really touching base on the science?
Yeah, that's something we've been working on, because when you look at the fifth grade test, some of the standards on the fifth grade test were taught in third and fourth grade. So if we're not focused on science really from kindergarten all the way up, it's too much content for the fifth grade teacher to teach by themselves. So Jonathan's team has been working on what's the plan for science for for third, fourth, and fifth grade moving forward, because we just can't wait till they get to fifth grade and decide we're going to try to most schools, it's the same kids. So, yeah, and we know there's some difference as they're going up, they have to learn the skills, because if you didn't master the third grade skills, it was even harder at fourth grade, especially in math. In reading, once we get tight in the new reading curriculum, it spirals a lot more than math. But in math, you have to know the third grade standards so that you can be successful in the fourth grade standards and going all the way up. I think in reading, we have a chance to spiral more. So I think that helps us out once the teachers get used to the curriculum. What we've learned is every time they introduce a new curriculum, everybody throws their hands up and go, oh my God, it's a new curriculum. So then once they start to break it down, they're like, oh, okay, we know how to do this. And one of the things I think both of our teams worked on this past year was making sure teachers understand how to teach reading and the science of how kids learn to read. So it won't matter in the future what curriculum you give them, that learning how to read and teaching reading is basic thing. And it doesn't matter if I give them this book or this book, it's still, I know how kids understand it.
So go to middle school. So last year, middle school had a little bit of a step back. That was like not traditional for us in our middle schools. And so we took the opportunity to just make adjustments to the curriculum altogether, add more end-of-unit assessments that are required across the network. There's a lot of pushback on that. I'm sure Yasmin would probably remember hearing that from her town halls, but it's the right decision. And we held like monthly development with 4 teachers in math, after one with our middle school algebra teachers, and some of our reading and science teachers together here at the network as well. And so if you go to the next slide, you'll see the data. You'll see that there was gains in performance for both reading and math in middle school. Just noting that 7th grade math for us is actually pre-algebra 8th grade math. And 8th grade math is actually algebra 1 for us here at the network. And so 8th grade had the largest, 8th grade math had the largest gain in terms of, 7th grade math had the largest gains in terms of 10 percentage points. But we were the furthest pioneer in that grade level. And in reading that there's been some modest growth across all grade levels. And so I think that this was more of a year for us to just get back to where we were the year before, and like make the adjustments, curricular adjustments that we actually needed to just strengthen like what our teachers are using in the classroom every day. Can I take that out of the question? Sure.
I can be completely out of date with regard to education stuff, but it's always been my understanding that until kids can think, what's the word for it? Sorry, abstractly, algebra is not appropriate for them, they're not going to get it. And I'm surprised you push it down. I understand the need for it and personal experience not being able to get enough math before you get into science and upper level math. I am in my own way surprised that we push it down. So,
Yeah, it looks like, well, I told you about the, in terms of like the access to higher level math. But actually what we did so that they can have more of an idea of the abstract concepts is like, we retooled the 8th grade math curriculum, the 7th grade math curriculum, so that it's actually algebra. What's actually kind of holding things back is like, the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math are like, good, nice to know, but actually not setting kids up for that algebra 1 experience that they, like, everything they needed to be successful in algebra 1, because it does start to have like, a little, kind of becomes like a math topics of that, an integrated math kind of approach is probably what the traditional 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math looks like, which kind of just doesn't always work for a kid going into algebra 1, which made us make the decision, what does 7th grade math need to look like to better set kids up to do some of that like abstract math. And so like, we took the liberty like a few years ago to actually look at what the standards are for the course and what standards are required for algebra 1 and then we school that curriculum to make sure kids were prepared for that. I would just say that the level of like complexity that kids will have to encounter in like their biology courses, the IB biology course, they've got to get, their math has to get much stronger and a lot faster. And I think that's like just the reality these days in terms of them being able to be really competitive in their high school courses. You've got to make sure their math is like pretty solid no matter how good that's going. So they can really get into geometry and be successful. And I think that was also a challenge too, because geometry is so different, from a kid perspective. So we needed to just make sure we're tiering them, like structuring the math classes to really build upon ourselves so kids are successful in having math. That was really our intended goal there. Yes.
So with the algebra, I think the algebra is fine in 8th grade. I think from kindergarten to 7th, it needs to be like, if they're in kindergarten, they probably need to be already learning 1st grade. And I know it's hard for kindergarten because once they, and then like if they're in 3rd grade, they need to be, you almost have to have a year up on each grade on that. So when they get algebra, they can already be prepared and say, oh, I've seen this, or I'm prepared for it. So I guess like before that last quarter of the year or that last kind of be ready to say, I'm ready for algebra 1, because then you'll know, okay, they truly understand the math concept of doing algebra, or we're moving them too fast. So I think that's the thing of kind of, like you said, starting in primary, of like really focusing on making sure that concept before you push them to algebra or pre-al, because they're not going to get it because they don't have the format of
The foundational skill.
Yeah.
Oh, I understand. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that, like how we need to shift in terms of our thinking around closing some of those foundational skills. So I wanted to talk about, like, if you go to the next slide, like we saw in primary, like they did the primary learning acceleration, very targeted and thoughtful strategy. And middle school, we took the approach around like how we retool our curriculum and like make sure that we have these smaller data-driven instruction segments. I was talking about what happens when we don't intervene, like when we don't do anything. And I think English 2 is a really good example. So there's a lot of data on this slide, and I really want to point you to that arrow that points down to the needs column. So for end of course assessment, students, as Jonathan said, they have to pass at the end of, by the time they graduate from high school. They can take the assessment and then decide to actually pass the assessment. So if you look at 10th grade is when students to just traditionally take English 2. To score proficiency is to score at the needs level. You can pass the exam by scoring approaches. So like, right, if you look at our 10th graders, 80% pass the exam, but 64% actually met the proficiency level. They are good to go. They don't need any further intervention according to the state taxes. If you just look one row below that and look at our 11th graders, you'll see 11% actually pass the exam of those retesters. It's 93 kiddos across the network, across all 13 schools. And only 1% met proficiency. You look down below for the 12th graders, we have 38 of those guys, but 13% passed and 0 actually met proficiency. We're talking about students who struggle, like, with English, which is, not uncommon for you to have students who have some learning gaps. But if you just look at the overall percentage pass rates, the impact of those 131 kiddos becomes 6 percentage points. Okay, 6 percentage points in terms of our overall pass rates. So like our school leaders need to understand, like, you're doing all this awesome work with your 10th graders, but who you haven't paid any attention to are those 11th and 12th graders who need probably the most support. And so for us this year, that's when I started with the original slide around, we need to be really clear around how we intervene when students are not meeting the proficiency bar, are not going to be successful, and we need to standardize across the network around what that looks like. And so pretty quickly after we received these results, we decided as a secondary team that we were going to have some targeted structured intervention specifically for those retesters. That's exactly what they need. And like, quite honestly, you guys, when we did the work around ACT and TSIA, that small group instruction is exactly what they needed to pass that way. It's exactly what these So it's the same thing that we have it structured, but put standards around and expectations that we're going to, that we need to actually do for this upcoming school year, and our team is looking forward to doing that. So if we go to the next slide, I'm just going to tell you how we're going to make sure we standardize those things is by making sure the work that we do around in the classroom is very targeted and driven by data, right? So we're looking at student data and responding. We have those structured and consistent interventions. So retesters will have structured and interventions. We'll have more structured interventions with mathematics. The team is still like fine-tuning what those will be. And then obviously with the primary learning acceleration, we'll continue with the work that the Southern team is doing with the third and fourth grade, some fifth grade classrooms. And then we have to really just determine what's going to be the targeted professional development, because it's hard to teach a classroom full of kids, or a secondary teacher, it's hard to teach 5 classrooms full of kids the same content. And so each one of them needs something different. So how do we make sure they're prepared to respond in the moment? And how do we make sure in their interventions they have the material that they need so those kids are getting what they need to be successful in the coursework? So I'm looking forward to spending the rest of the summer figuring that all out and getting that done so we can have a really strong start to the school year. I do think that will be the first thing for us next year to like drive to higher outcomes across the board, across each application. So last thing here, our next steps, I kind of said some of those things. We're adding the 4th grade, we're continuing to work with our primary learning acceleration. One of the things we are adding is something that Priscilla is so good at, but there's only one Priscilla. And we're adding a leadership specialist to work with those primary leaders at the campuses. We think that also matters. I think I'm looking forward to when we come back in August or September. One of the leaders you guys met at the retreat, Marshall Myers, he was like probably a slave in terms of his performance as a brand leader. And we realized not only do all these little systems and standards work, but leadership matters too. So we have a specialist joining with Priscilla and team working with those 10 most performing primary leaders. And in middle school, like I said, we are working on the math intervention specialist and the materials we use to work with that team. Priscilla said this about the 5th graders, the rising 6th graders. We are going to figure out what they need to get them jump into that curriculum, especially at our kiddos who are going into those middle schools from our PLA campuses in high school. Like I said, we will make sure the retesters have what they need to be successful to pass this competition. Any questions for us?
Just a clarifying question. In high school, if you don't pass STAR and say 10th grade, do you still move on to the 11th grade coursework?
So this is the rule in Texas. If you pass the course, you can't repeat a course you already passed. And so you can pass a class course and not pass the exam. And that's usually what happens. I think that's why creating an intervention, you got to have clever course types in order to put them in those courses. But there are the data from year over years, and it's in the deck that Yasmin sent us.
So thank you, Wendy, thank you, Jonathan, thank you, Priscilla, and I'll hand it to Leslie. We're going to let Leslie do her update, then I'm going to call for both motions related to our 2 finance items, and then I'm going to talk about enrollment.
Great, thank you. So, 2025, we are on plan to deliver our debt requirements. So Yasmin mentioned earlier, this is a formality that we have to go through every year. We have the requirement from TEA where we need to amend our budget to basically realign to where our actuals are coming in. Please note that while what we have up here is hopefully close to where we land, there will still be things, moving pieces. We still have a month to close out, and then with that, there are a lot of additional entries that my team will be chasing down for approvals at the end of the year. So please know we're going to come back to you again in September, October, and say we need to re-amend. So just keep that in mind. But overall, you'll see original plan for 2025 school year had an average daily attendance scholar count of 20,569. We are exceeding that and coming in at 21,014. That's also just an important note as we start to look at 2026, the way we do our budgeting. We do take the enrollment and attendance numbers and take a conservative approach on how we do the budgeting at the beginning of the year. So just want to call that out. Overall then, we are projecting right now to land at a debt service ratio of about 1.25. So this is the projected budget as of late. We reviewed with the Finance and Strategy Committee last Friday, and we will ideally be asking you to vote to amend this budget.
You want, I'm happy to ask for that right now because we're on 2026. Great. Do I have a motion to approve the amended fiscal year 2025 budget as Leslie presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Carol. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Rusty. Are there any votes against the motion? The motion is approved by unanimous vote.
Right, thank you. All right, so then we'll pivot to 2026, and what does that mean? Overall, we're obviously going to take some portion of a conservative approach so that we are prepared as an organization to set ourselves up for success. If we think about budgeting for education, once I push all of the toothpaste out of the toothpaste tube, it's really almost impossible to get it back in. So that's why we take an approach on, you'll see the scholar count. It looks like it's going down from this year to next year, because if I give out everybody's budget, and I am not going to be able to get that toothpaste back into the tube. So I'm preparing for that, basically. We are planning to deliver on a 1.22 ratio. Amanda will be go through for you where we're at today on the scholar count. I just want to call out there are a few differences when I refer to our scholar count on an average daily attendance number versus enrollment numbers that Amanda's going to call out. She's going to show you a snapshot in time. I am going to show you an average for the entire year. So we have fall off the day before school, we have 15% fall off. We continue to have withdrawals throughout the school year. We continue to have add-ons throughout the school year. We also then have dips in attendance, we have seasonality. So all of those things make our numbers slightly different. So I do just want to caveat that for you guys because it can be confusing. I also am taking a 50% count for pre-K scholars. So we get half the funding for a pre-K student. So when I'm reporting them, I'm going to take that as a half count.
And also the only thing I might add for the benefit of our new board members is sometimes the state in a funding metric gives us funding for actual student of total enrollment that we have, and sometimes they give us funding for a certain measure versus ADA, which is basically if on an average day 93% of our kids are in school, that's how we should think about it. On average, how many kids are with us each day? That is at, on average, ADA scholar count. Just because of the way the state funds us with so many metrics based on ADA versus actual kids, it's why we have to use this for budget purposes. But of course, we want to know the full number of children we have enrolled, and that's what we get for the campus numbers.
So overall, I think we have a strong plan to deliver our debt service and to allow our schools to do what they need to next year and get them off and running. So at this point, this is basically our projected 2026, and then we have reviewed in much further detail, again, with the Finance and Strategy Committee. So they have reviewed this in much more detail. I'm happy to provide some of that detail. If Yasmin also sent out a
in the budget
all through all of that. I will just open it up for any questions that you may have based on that material. And please feel free to reach out to me separately if you have any follow-up questions. But otherwise, this is the recommended budget that we will be voting on.
Do I have a motion to approve the fiscal year 2026 budget as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Are there any votes against the motion? Motion is approved by unanimous vote. Thanks so much,
Thank you.
Leslie, for your team work. It is very, very hard to build a budget during legislative session where we are trying to absorb everything that's coming in and still absorbing and building a budget. So thank you very much. Amanda.
Great.
Hi everyone, I'd like to share an enrollment update. What was said, in the enrollment world, we like to count all kids as full humans, so that's the discrepancy that we see here on our budget targets. We are continuing to track ahead. Re-enrollment was our last board meeting, and we've added about 100 additional families who are re-enrolled, so we're seeing positive momentum there. We're also seeing positive momentum with our new families, just over 5,200 fully enrolled, another 700 in progress, and then we'll continue to get in applications and make offers over the summer. It's really our path to get us to our day before school target, because as we know, we see a drop getting to the first day of school, so we account for that in our numbers. I think overall we're up 2%. All our teams are focused to be where we were last year and continue to be on track and continue to push across the board. So, any questions that I can answer on enrollment?
I know bringing board members is going to be a very odd phenomenon, seeing that day before school and then that drop. This is just consistent that we've seen for years, where anywhere from 10 to 14% of the kids we think are coming back do not show back up. If you think about it, for the 6,000 plus new scholars that we're adding, we're a free public school, so someone's putting down a deposit that makes them sticky. They do have to buy a uniform, and their school supplies, but we don't know if that 6,000, maybe 500 are sitting on another charter school, enrolled in another charter school also, and went through the paperwork, and they're gonna make a decision at the very last minute. They might move. There's just so many different things at play. Because numbers are so consistent year over year, we do this over-enroll thing to protect ourselves, because we just know by school, by grade, how this is going to shake out. So that's why you see this pushing to a day before school target, and then ultimately how we get it being annualized and then over the year that we go through.
Yeah, so this is typical in traditional public school systems, that they have a follow-up. I'm sure it's not 15%.
It's not
Do they have a
15%. I mean, we know that lots of traditional public school districts are becoming involved, and they're coming this way. But I think, right, the difference for us is families are making a choice for something different. We have no visibility into how many places have they placed a spot for themselves, and that's what makes it so tricky to know. But no, I do not. I think, yes, I think districts have a fall off, but it's not to this level.
And like last year said that we, at this time last year, we trying to figure out now, time the school started, we were able to get another 1,300 pass or students
Enrollment.
enrollment. So we'd still be a little short.
Yeah, we
Out there.
expect to be, a bit short, because in some places we're making a strategic move to be soft in a section to support future enrollment. But I think these numbers are kind of like the lofty targets, where if we got them all full before the day before school, or all full house, the key that we need is to stay above the target. So we're really, right, like watching that as we go through the summer to make sure that we have enough of a cushion on the first day of school to, stay over Leslie's number.
within 400 days of our day before school target, and that'll probably be the strongest day before school presence we've had during this year.
Yeah, and this year our day before school target is higher, because last year we were much more conservative in our target, X number of kids per section. This year we're using historical data to say, we know for the last 3 years, right, the drop at this specific grade, this school, is 10% or 25%, and you plan accordingly. And so we build that into that number as well.
Any other questions for Amanda? Great, thank you so much. Okay, awesome. Then Rusty, I'm gonna hand it over to you to help share the results of our trustee self-evaluation survey, and then share our new candidates to the board.
So first off, thank you all so much for filling out the trustee evaluation. There's always room for improvement in almost any method you ever make in your life. And so knowing what it is that we're doing well and knowing where we might want to make changes in order to do even better, it's important that we do those. We added some additional information this next year. I suspect we'll continue to do that. So if you'll look at the pie charts, lost that word for a second there. I will tell you, as a human being, I am a person with a very hard time giving a 1 to 5 and giving a 5 in. It's just my nature. And that is true of other people as well. But these are really incredibly good numbers. When you see the yes of 87% versus 13% who did not attend any of that, that's really good. Thank you for your great participation. The school leader luncheon, which I think is something that both sides of that equation really benefit from. The leaders take a lot away from that luncheon, have a better sense of what the board is working with and working on. And I know for myself, I've certainly been incredibly impressed by the very committed individuals who are working with our scholars and our faculty. And the number who have attended 3 or more board meetings, those are all really, really, really good numbers. It's fabulous to know that almost all of you believe that you can clearly articulate a book's mission. And I want to give kudos to Yasmin and Dr. Washington for going over that stuff on a regular basis, so it's top of mind for all of us. I appreciate that. And many of you have talked regularly with other people in your network of human beings. And that's important. One of our biggest jobs that it's sometimes more difficult to hang on to is to increase awareness throughout the city of Dallas of the value of charter education and Uplift in particular. So don't ever fail to take any opportunity you get. I tell the story of I was meeting with a candidate in a restaurant. It's going to be a bunch of us to have a conversation this week. They were feeling good. And the maitre d' asked me, said, "Oh, is this a birthday party?" And I said, "No, it's actually a luncheon for a school." I said, "What kind of school?" I said, "Charter schools." I don't know what a charter school is. I know public schools, I know private schools, I know what a charter schools are. And I spent 2.5 minutes explaining to this maitre d' what a charter school was. So take every opportunity you can possibly get. So the next slide, I think we have some areas for growth. And it would be really important for chairs of committees, head of governance, just to start to address how it is we can improve these numbers and have them look much closer to the slides you've seen before. So 51% agree that they're engaged, 48% say they're strongly engaged. There's a distinction being made there. And honestly, in my earliest year, I would not have felt entirely like I was, had common understanding. But it is important that we do, as quickly as possible, ask questions at the meetings. They're full, but it does not mean you should not be asking, so that you are really good at articulating what it is that we are all doing together. And this one, neutral as an active and engaged committee member. That could represent a number of things, but again, it is worth our time and energy to understand how we can make the service on our committees more meaningful for each and every one of you. So we would like to get that neutral move to agree, and agree moved into the strongly agree category. So please give us some feedback. Be thinking about this. We will probably take some time at the retreat to have these discussions while we're all present and getting up to speed and heading into our committee work for the year. So be thinking about what ways we could improve each of those areas. On this one, it's great that as many of you attended the luncheon as did, but it really is an absolutely fabulous opportunity to bring new people on. I will say that we do a masterful job of, they're different every single year. I haven't seen two that cover the same territory. It's not always the same person speaking. It almost always involves, last year was alumni. And people were really excited to hear from graduates of school, of the various schools, what it is they're doing now, updates on the healthcare high schools and any other initiatives. Other years it has been school directors. One year, I think the most thrilling was, how did I take my school as a school director, or potentially as a new school director, and turn it from one of the lowest performing schools into one of the highest performing schools. And hearing the directors talk about what their efforts have meant, have done in the actual schools themselves. It is really fascinating. It's an investment of an hour and a half of your time. There is absolutely no financial ask whatsoever of anyone, those of us on the board or our guests. So if you're ever uncomfortable about borrowing from someone with me to some place they might be asked for money, that is not going to happen. Please, please, please commit to bring at least one person with you next year to the stakeholder list. This one's hard for me to do, honestly. Yes, it would be absolutely fabulous if each of you would really think hard on who in your communities, whether it's your religious institutions or other organizations that you're a part of, might be really, really interested in serving on this board. We have, to be honest with you, an incredible class of people coming on this year. As you, I'm sure, read when you saw their bios for actually voting, but we all know a diverse group of people from lots of different professions, and it would be really wonderful if more nominations came from more of you. Yasmin has always been a great source for this, and but many of us know people that we would love to get engaged in this group and in that experience. So please, 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 again, one more thing I'd love for you to think about and bring into the next year. So now we move on to this incredible group of people who had the opportunity. This has actually been one of my favorite things about the role that I have. The governance committee gets me a lot of amazing people who have done amazing things, but are committed and are committed to improving education in the city. It is a wonderful opportunity to have authentic conversations Don Moore to my right. This is the short blurb, founder and CEO of Uplift's title, but that does not begin to scratch the surface of all that she has done, including being the CEO of the Dallas Zoo while it was experiencing the loss of its CEO from an unexpected death. So being able to handle a lot of things on the fly and keep everything functioning and going together. So this is Dawn Moore to my right. Stephanie Sambord, she is the former Chief Customer and Retail Officer of the Neiman Marcus Group. Again, one of the things that is a skill to bring to this board is marketing, branding. We spend a lot of time trying to make sure people know about us, what we are, clearly and carefully, and that families want to bring their scholars into the network. So she has a skill set that we are excited to deploy. Kelly Whaley is really sorry he could not be here this evening. Kelly came to us because we are actually this year and next year losing two very significant people who have done a lot of work in our real estate area. And Cam will be in his 9th year next year, and Tony, though not over there, is leaving us at the end of this year. And so we really needed to be bringing someone on that could deal with real estate. While we're not actively growing now, we have those circumstances as we did last year where suddenly a deal that we had thought was firm went away. And we needed that expertise immediately. Kelly is young through his own life experience. He really understands the lives of our scholars. His grandparents made sure that he got an education, and he had service grants. I didn't even know these existed, but both at Jesuit and TCU, he did community service in return for part of his tuition coverage. So education is a really important thing to him, and he has seen what a difference it's made in his own personal life, which is actually one of the more wonderful stories we get to hear when we sit down and talk to him. Christine Prairie actually has served on the board before in its other incarnation. Before we became one centralized board around the central management office, each of the individual what's the word? Campuses. I thought it was by the leadership where they went primary, middle, and high school. But the individual campuses had a small board of their own that did not unlike what we do for CMO. And Christine was actually active in one of those. It actually is currently known as Uplift Atlas. It was Uplift Peak at the time. And at that time, Dr. Washington was a director in that school. So Christine and Dr. Washington know each other from a prior incarnation. She's also a former management consultant, so a wide range of skills. Dr. Lauren Fine, for those of us who had lunch with her and met with her, is one of the most energetic and committed people I have ever seen. Has a personal passion about increasing the diversity of providers in medicine. She has been instrumental in bringing on the Baylor Scott and Boyd program. She was there with our scholars in that school at the time. She is an amazing person. She and her husband, who's also an emergency physician, the two of them leave time in their busy schedules as physicians to be teachers as well as practicing physicians. It's really important. She's done this year, she created and applied for a grant to go out and educate emergency room physicians about what the implementation of some of the legislative actions that they took, what impact they actually mean inside of the hospital, as opposed to looking at the esoteric language and it is just as important of all the things that we leave the world, leave behind in the world, is also who we want to carry forward our goals and our philanthropic impact. And Kristen is playing a lot of that. Thank you so much. Latasha Archie is one of our two new parents, trustees. You know, we started this is our third class. You and Jeremy will be our third set of parent trustees. And we have tremendous gratitude to the two of you who did it the first time around, the first year when we were all struggling to figure out what that was. And that was Delina and Rose. But we really have a good sense. And as you can hear, we get a tremendous amount of information from you all about what actually is going on the ground in the schools. From a governance perspective, it's not like we have a role to play in exactly how any individual school, any individual director, any individual faculty member is dealt with by Uplift. But knowing the realities on the ground in our schools really is crucial. And each of you has brought that to the table, and understanding that not just your children's experiences, but all the scholars' experiences. So this is the slate. They are not, it says proposed, the voting has already taken place. It was a unanimous vote to bring you all onto the board this year. And we are grateful for your interest in being a part of it. So thank you very much, all of you. So welcome.
Welcome to our new board members. So just to make it official, we already sent out the ballot. You all did an amazing job of completing it. Thank you, and it was unanimous. I'm gonna ask for an official motion. Do I have a motion to approve the unanimous results of the Board of Trustees and Officer elections as presented?
So moved.
Awesome, thanks, Carol. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any votes against the motion? The motion is approved by unanimous vote, so with that formality, in addition to the electronic ballot, you completed. So thank you again. Welcome to our new board members. I have the pleasure of getting to just offer some words of gratitude to our departing board members, and many of them are feeling good, so I'm so glad so I can offer my words of appreciation directly to them. So Tony is been on the board for over a decade now, and was one of my early board chairs, and was so grateful for his leadership and support and friendship. He's a former chair of our finance committee, former chair of our real estate committee. As Rusty shared, we've been so blessed to have Cam's expertise in real estate, but Tony's expertise, particularly when Tony chaired the real estate committee, was through a lot of our growth at Uplift and opening many new schools. And what I always appreciated about Tony in his role as chair, when I would meet with him every week or every other week, was he was always so empathetic, so thoughtful and supportive, and very practical in the advice that he would give me. And still to this day, I know I can pick up the phone and call him and ask for his guidance on something and get very good advice and very honest advice to you. So Tony, thank you so much for your service for so many years on behalf of
It's been an honor, yes, enjoyed it.
Ed is not here. He's our only departing board member who's not here today, but I do want to recognize Ed. He was for a long time previous chair of our audit committee. Ed helped us during a very interesting time a few years ago before Leslie joined, when we had to make a very difficult decision to bring on a new senior leader of accounting and CFO at the same exact time, and it just kicked off audit season. And Ed, as a former audit partner at Deloitte, was really helpful in just navigating that moment in time. And so I'm grateful for Ed's service. And he also has served on my board. Rusty, who is leaving us at the end of this school year, is obviously our current chair of governance. You just got to see that. And I would say Rusty has been our strongest governance committee chair we have ever had. I have 16 years of lots of people I've seen in this role, and I'm so grateful for all that Rusty has brought together. She's brought really strong processes in place. She's done an excellent job of really being thoughtful about the onboarding of new board members, whether it's board buddies, or how we think about our orientation session, and making sure that our inaugural parent board members felt really welcomed and supported in joining us on this journey. She mentioned the school leader lunches. That was actually Rusty's idea that she had seen at another nonprofit organization, and it's been a huge success, as you've heard. And we've had board members who've spoken so much about how they really enjoyed that. So, Rusty, we will miss you, and thank you so much for all of those in the hospital.
Thank you, and I am going to miss being here, and I'm going to miss so many of you. I cannot tell you how hard it is to leave that. But I need to do that, but I have really, really enjoyed the work. I have enjoyed the companionship and the partnership in this work.
You don't have to be a stranger. We'll see you at the stakeholder
You, you will see me at those events. I'm absolutely certain, and I will make one.
Okay, sounds perfect. And then I want to thank our inaugural parent trustees, Ms. Hopkins and Ms. Barbosa. We've never had parent trustees this way before, and you all were so gracious to be our inaugural class. What I appreciate so much is it's been tough to come into this room in a new board type of position, and you both have been so useful and helpful and confident in sharing your perspectives. And as Rusty shared, like, you always hear it from a broader parent perspective versus this is what's just impacting my specific child. And every time you offered perspectives, like, I was listening closely to make sure that we were taking those into account. And it really helped us just tee up this like ongoing structure, being able to have parents from across the network and have their voices officially represented at this table. So I just want to thank both of you for the ways you serve. We look forward to taking information back to your respective campuses over the past 2 years. Thank you so much. It's all helped in recognizing our work.
So I do want to say a little bit more about our two newest parent trustees, which is Latasha has 2 children in the school, a 10th grader and a 7th grader, and they are she has been the president of what their equivalent of a PTA is for 7 or 8 years. Imagine doing that job for 7 years. I just can't. And Jeremy Scruggs has 4. And as a result, he has kids in primary school, middle school, and in the high school at Uplift Sam, and is a fitness professional who helps and works with the coaches at the high school. So thank you very much. My final is, you said it, and I have not written it down, mentors. It has been a wonderful thing to add someone you can call to go, no, what's the history of this? You can always do it with your committee chairs, but it is sometimes really nice to have a board buddy or board mentor. We've taken multiple stabs at how we wanted to assign, not assign, etc. Some people are willing to have more than one. Some people, I twist their arm, and I'm sometimes going, it's a wonderful opportunity for those of you who have experience and who have remembered what it is to step into this process and the fire hose training that is that first year. So I'm going to invite you all to send me an email and/or Pete Zwick, who is the incoming governance chair. If you are willing to be a mentor or a guide to one of these wonderful incoming trustees, please let me know that. We need to have people available to be standing boards and people to answer questions. So I
second? Thank you. Are there any votes against the motion? The motion is approved by unanimous vote, so thank you so much. The time is now 5:51, and this meeting is adjourned. So thank you so much. I hope you all have a great summer, and we will see you back in August when the school year has kicked off, and we'll share how the start of that went. So thank you so much, everyone.
Good luck.